First of all, thank you for joining me today at this ungodly hour on a Saturday morning. Today I want to tell a story about productized services. How many of you have their own business? Okay. How many of you would like to start their own business? Okay. How many of you are running a product company in Drupal? Or planning to do a product company in Drupal? Okay. So I'm Kristof and Tomme. I'm a bit of a weird person in the community because I'm a Drupal engineer. I'm not a software developer. But I got sucked into Drupal and about 10 years ago. And I've loved every moment of it, and I definitely don't want to go back. I really enjoyed being able of this amazing community that enabled me to do much more than I was able to do in biotechnology. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, and Drupal allowed me to do that much easier without having to depend on investment. In biotechnology, anything you do costs millions and millions. In Drupal, I got started with a laptop, and Drupal itself is free, so starting investment costs were minimal, and I was able to start a business very easily. And probably a lot of you are either working in business like that or have started your own business like that. I'll share these notes. And I would like to, today, this morning, I want to tell you my story. It's a little bit of a mixture. I'm not going to cover everything that I talked about in my session proposal, so if in the end, if there's a time for questions and there's anything specific from that that you still want to hear, then just ask. Because I was like playing with the information and I tried to make it something interesting, like a story that would hopefully capture your attention at this hour. And the way I want to tell it is kind of a mixed format, a little bit of story, a little bit of a business strategy, and then a little bit of story again. But for starters, I would like to start with Act 1. Last year, in August, our business was pretty much in trouble. We had been working for quite a while on a product called WalkUp. And we had a lot of traction on that. We had a first crowdfunding campaign that we successfully raised $12,000, which is pretty good in crowdfunding for open source projects. Then we had lots of people signing up on the mailing list, lots of people saying this is awesome, please continue. But we were working on it and we couldn't get a product market fit with our product. So it was August, I had been spending a lot of my time focusing on the product rather than on the consulting business. And we didn't have enough work for the consulting business. So we were kind of stuck between either we go and find investors, or we need to make this thing fly, or we have to stop and go back to consulting, or the business is going to explode. And basically what was going on was that we couldn't get product market fit. People said they wanted the product, but they were not using it. Even some people bought it, and they still didn't use it. And that was really weird. I never imagined that was possible, that people would pay a significant amount of money for a product and then still not use it. In the middle of this, I was approached by 2 other Drupal consultancies. One of them was SkyBest, I'm not going to name the other one. And they had similar lead problems. They didn't have enough business, and I was like, okay, you know what? Either I hire a sales guy, it's super risky, because it takes about 6 months for someone to really get up to speed. It would cost a lot of money, and I wouldn't be sure that I would get back what I was investing. Or I go and do sales myself. So what if I go and do sales for all 3 companies, and we start some sort of joint venture, and are we going to become Hussar? That was the name of the alliance that I wanted to call it. So I started like dragging my network. I started going to a lot more networking events because I had stopped doing that because I was busy with the product. So now you could argue that this is probably not the best sales methodology ever, so I really pushed myself into that, and we're still here. So, but I'll tell you the rest of the story after a little bit of business strategy. So, who here has a business degree? Yeah, no? Oh, okay. One of the key things that you learn about businesses, or that you have to learn about running a business, is that there's 3 really important things in a business. There's product, process, and people. I don't know if you've seen The Prophet. Anybody seen The Prophet? Yeah. It's a TV show with a Greek entrepreneur. Very, very entertaining and very, very educational. If you're an entrepreneur, you really should go and watch The Prophet. It's basically about a really wealthy guy who goes around buying businesses, and he kind of like X-rays them and like figures out what are the problems, and then he helps them to get over that. So and he always talks about these 3 P's: the people, process, product. Now in marketing, they talk about a 4th P, and they actually argue that it's even more important than those 3 P's. It's positioning. And positioning is what makes you different. It's what makes you special. Like for Ben & Jerry's, it's this goofy cow stuff and like lots of things like that that they're doing. And positioning, it's not really branding. It's more kind of saying this is who we are, and doing it in such a convinced and completely vulnerable way that people remember who you are. It's saying no to 1,000 things and saying yes to only one thing. And by doing that, making yourself referable, because you become the person who does this one thing. And everybody remembers that. 10 years ago, almost 10 years ago, when I started with Drupal was that thing for us. We were a Drupal consultancy company. We were in Central Europe, so we were slightly cheaper. And just being a Drupal shop was enough because it was special. Like there were very few consulting companies that were specializing on Drupal. Today there's a lot more Drupal shops. Being a Drupal shop is not enough. If you're just a Drupal shop, there's a zillion competitors for you, and you're undistinguishable from everybody else. And people will not remember you. They will not refer you because. Maybe your customers might refer you, but they won't remember you from a networking event. Like, oh, you need XYZ. I know somebody who does XYZ. If your thing is Drupal, they probably know 2 or 3 people that do XYZ. So that does make you memorable. There's the thing is, positioning and specializing is not just important for referability, it's also important for economies of scale. And I'm sure that everybody has had some economy classes, and this is one of the first things they drill into you is economies of scale, specialization, so that you can then, you can specialize in this, I specialize in that, I make shoes, you make flowers, and we trade with each other, and I can make much better flowers than you can make flowers. And I get really good shoes, you get really good flowers, and we're all happy. And it's definitely true. If you want to make money, if you want to be successful, you need to specialize. That counts not just for businesses; it also counts for people, even for developers. Specialization makes you distinguishable. Maybe you're a full stack developer, and that's your specialization. But even that is a specialization. There's only one really big problem with specialization, is that it also makes you vulnerable. It makes you fragile. Because, see, these are cameras. You know what happened to cameras, right? That was a disaster. there was a whole industry specialized in non-digital photography. There was this whole supply chain of film and everything. And in an incredibly short period, it completely disappeared, and they had to completely retool and switch to digital photography. And even today, the photographers are still trying to figure out how to make enough money out of that, because their business has been completely rewritten. And there's new models that are coming up, but it's become a lot harder because there's also a lot more competition. And as I said, so specialization also makes you fragile because you become dependent on very specific market conditions to be profitable. So while you are more successful at making money, you're also more in danger, because now if something happens to your environment, suddenly everything might evaporate. And if you're too specialized, you're stuck, because it isn't that easy to retool. So in times like today, that are extremely turbulent, in times where innovation is going so fast, like just look at the front end. It's insane what's going on in the JavaScript world. Angular is kind of like reaching critical mass, and then comes React that's kind of building up critical mass, and all the cool kids are saying like one day it's Angular, then it's React, and it goes on and on and on like that. And it's not just in technology world; it's everywhere. Our society is changing at a breakneck speed. It's much faster than it was ever before, and it keeps accelerating. And we're going into a time that is extremely turbulent. If you're too specialized in a turbulent time, it's extremely dangerous. You can see this in cities. If you look around, what are the animals that you see around? It's pigeons and rats and cockroaches. Those are like the three species that are extremely successful in cities. And they're all kind of generalists. They eat whatever, and they're extremely good in being whatever. They're not specialized. They're not specializing in one specific flower or one specific kind of food. They're a bit all over the place. And so sometimes, this balancing act between specialization and generalization is kind of a dichotomy that's hard to do. Like, how do you deal with that? How do you figure out, should you specialize or should you be whatever? And then I've had been thinking a lot about this question, and then I think about a year ago I read this book, Antifragile, by Nassim Taleb. Anybody read that book? Great. Okay, if I can teach you this today, this will be worth it. This is going to change your life. Nassim Taleb talks about antifragile. Now, he's a super smart person. His style is a little bit arrogant. Bear with it. Read the book. It's like condensed wisdom or something. It's incredibly important and interesting, especially today for the market that we're living in. He talks about antifragile. And if I ask you, what is the opposite of fragile? Most people will say it's either robust or flexible. It's something that from random events stays the same. But it's not true. That's not the opposite of fragile. Fragile things are things that get destroyed when a random event happens. So anti-fragile should be something that becomes better and stronger from a random event. Like, does that even exist? It does, actually. Netflix is doing that to their server infrastructure. They're using Chaos Monkey, and I'm sure you've heard this story if you're following tech scene. Chaos Monkey is a software that randomly shuts down services. They do that to themselves. Can you imagine? Can you imagine like going in your infrastructure and like making a program that randomly shuts down stuff? That's insane, right? But it's not, because it forces you to be always on your feet and to always be ready, prepared for whatever that can happen. And they've gotten like a much better uptime because of this tool. Now, I don't know if they built this because of reading antifragile, but it's very much in a similar kind of thinking. But it's not just software that's antifragile or that can make you antifragile. We are, by definition, by nature, we are antifragile. Organisms, ecosystems, people, if you don't challenge them, they become weak and they become fragile, breakable. If you put a plant into your house where there's no wind, there's no rain, it's always perfect, you give it always water at just the right time, beautifully on the top of its roots, and then you put it outside, it almost dies. Like, it takes a lot of time for it to recuperate from that, because it hasn't been challenged. It hasn't had to build the mechanisms to cope with stress. So stress is actually good for you, within certain limits. If there's too much stress, you also get destroyed. But if exposing yourself to minimum effective doses of stress is important, it makes you stronger. For example, Nassim Taleb argues that we should all be doing fasting. They used to do in older times, the fast when you don't eat. He actually argues that we should be doing that. There's the whole movement for what's the name? Like the ketonic diet, where you don't eat for a long extended, like for a day or something, or for 2 days. That's all inspired on this stuff, where you purposefully change the environment for yourself. If every day you eat the same thing, you're not going to be very healthy. Even if that same thing is containing all the vitamins. Our system, our body needs this, ups and downs. And the same counts for businesses. So, and how does this work? Actually, fragility can be outsourced, and nature does this. Do you know what this picture is? Anybody knows? These are Darwin finches from the Galapagos Islands. And it's one species of bird, but they all have different beaks. This is one of the key things that Darwin looked at that got him the idea of evolutionary theory. So all of these birds, this is one species of bird, but the beaks are for like eating one specific type of fruit from a cactus, or eating insects, or eating, there are a couple of different niches that this one bird species has evolved to take advantage of. So what actually happened is that the bird species on the population has outsourced their fragility to smaller subpopulations that have specialized in specific niches. So what happens when one of these niches is destroyed, there's no more cacti, or there's a dry year and a bunch of plants of a certain species die, there's no problem. Like, maybe one of these populations might even disappear. It's not a problem, because as a group, the population remains and becomes stronger, because they've evolved, they've now adapted to the new environment, and they've become more adapted to that new environment. Populations work like that. This is how evolution works. Anybody works for Cronos here? Yeah? This is also what Cronos does, by the way. Cronos Group, they have outsourced their fragility to the smaller companies inside of the Cronos Group. The mother company is going to survive no matter what happens. No matter what happens to any one of these companies, they will survive. And I think it's a brilliant strategy. The only thing, I would love to build a company that uses a similar strategy. Only I would make it so that the entrepreneurs inside of the companies, that I don't outsource my fragility to them, but that they would be part of the mother company, so that they could also benefit from the anti-fragility of the whole system. And but how does that work? So how does, like I explained it a little bit already, but how does that really work? How do you become anti-fragile? Evolution really shows that. Again, nature shows us how that works. Evolution uses optionality. And I don't know, like, you know what's an option in stock exchange trades? It's an option to buy something at a future date at a certain price. So I make a small investment today so that I can get a certain condition in the future. So and nature does this all the time. So what the way that evolution works is that you get this distribution of individuals in your population. Some event happens, like this population gets separated because of a river or because of a mountain or whatever, or there's a major ecological disaster, and then some of these populations split. You know, one group that has like slightly bigger hands can now dig better for roots or something crazy like that, and then this is how evolution works. And basically what they're doing, what nature is doing, is it's making a whole bunch of options, random options. Nature is not smart. Nature is incredibly stupid. But it just makes a whole lot of options and then calls them. And that's how we got all of our diversity in nature today. There's even some people that think that optionality, purely the force to maximize options, that is the definition of intelligence. Like yesterday in the keynote, we saw the program for playing chess, and but that is very specific for chess, right? You have to set the conditions, you have to say what you're trying to maximize. This guy, it's a TED Talk, go and check it out. It's in my slide notes. It's Alex Wisner-Gross, an equation for intelligence. He explains how they were able to create systems that show intelligent behavior without actually explaining what they were doing. Like, so you have a system that's doing something that only an intelligent system normally would do, and it's not built for it. It's just maximizing optionality, future optionality. So, long roads, long winding road. What does this mean for businesses? How do you specialize with maximum optionality? This is the big dilemma, right? This is what we're trying. Like, if you can crack this, you can thrive in today's environment. You can build a really successful business and or be a very successful entrepreneur, right? Because you will be prepared for whatever happens to the environment. The way nature does that is that it makes lots of small bets. And I don't know if you've heard this before, but it's often told that as an entrepreneur, you should be making small bets. And like trees do this. A tree makes thousands or tens of thousands of seeds, and it just spreads them. It has no idea whatsoever where those seeds are going to land, but they just randomly distribute. And then, when one of those seeds is in a really good place, it just grows like crazy. And what happens is that there's an asymmetry in the risk profile. The cost of failure is extremely small. It's this really small investment. The potential upshot of success is incredibly huge, because this one tiny seed becomes this giant tree. You can run your business the same way, where you make small bets, and then see. And then whatever happens to the environment, maybe something like, maybe you post a blog post about, I don't know, a certain type of solution. And it's a little bit early, like you're very looking forward, but then something major happens in the media. Like for example, if you would have posted a blog post about testing car exhaust fumes before the Volkswagen incident, you would have made an option for something like that happening. Like maybe you didn't even know that was going to happen. But the moment that happens, your optionality kicks in, and you can say, oh, now I can use this and actually build further on it. And I can further invest in it and make it grow. And that's kind of the methodology that I'm using in my business. Do you know Zapier? You know Zapier? Yeah. They do this brilliantly. I bumped into them when, like, 2 years ago or something, when I was looking for an integration between Google Docs and Trello. And I was like, oh great, it exists. You find a Google results. It's like, unfortunately, this integration doesn't yet. Well, first, Trello is a software that does this and this. Google Docs is a software that does this and this. Unfortunately, we at this moment don't yet have an integration, but you can cast your vote here. And you click on the vote button, and you get a pop-up that asks you for your email address. And what are they doing here? It's brilliant, because they haven't built any of this. They haven't invested anything really in those pages. They've just built a zillion pages of all the possible combinations, and they're just collecting emails. And the moment they see that one of these niches is becoming big enough, they say, okay, it's time to build this thing. They just build it, and they send an email to all those people like, hey, your Zap is been created. Come along and try it out. It's a fantastic idea. I think it's, and this is exactly the small bets methodology. We're doing something similar on a slightly smaller scale still. Like, we're working on a project that's on a much bigger scale. But what we've been doing with our blog is that we often create thought pieces about something that could be interesting. For example, half a year ago or something, I made a post about Drupal as a tool for car sharing. I don't know if any of you remember that, maybe. So I wrote this blog post. It was because one of my Boot Circle members from my meetup is working on a car sharing business here in Ghent. Very cool, electrical cars. If you live in Ghent, you should check it out. And I was telling him, like, you should really make open source for that. You should make an open source tool because that way you could share the cost of your software between a bunch of companies. I said, yeah, that's a good idea. So I wrote a blog post. I published it to the Drupal Planet because I told him, let's try and see if this is something that we could do with Drupal. Did the post, and I had a call to action in it, like, if you're interested in this, give me your details. And we had like 3 or 4 answers. I was like, okay, this is not something we should currently further work on. But that post is out there. If at any time suddenly there's a lot of people that start looking for this kind of software, we've got it set. We've got an option on that, and we can still call it in the future. I call this content fishing, like putting out your line in a bunch of different market niches. But what does this all have to do with productized services? Like, who knows what is a productized service? Yeah. I know it's a lot of dancing, and it's early, but it's good. It's good for the blood, to make your blood more. So, some open source software. Well, we're all in the open source business, right? And open source software is a little bit tricky in terms of business model. Well, you have to be creative, and you can't do a first order business model where you just capture the value of your tool. You have to build something else. Open source business models almost always are platform games. And what I mean with that is that you build a platform and you give it away so that as much people as possible start using your platform, and then you build some sort of business on top of that. Like, maybe you provide training, you provide like this support. Maybe you're doing custom implementations, like most of us in the Drupal community. That's what we do. But they're all platform plays. The problem is and most people in the Drupal community, when we start thinking about products, we start thinking about a product like Drupal, like making our own thing that sits on top of Drupal. And often that's a pretty bad idea. Because basically what you're doing is you're taking a small market, because Drupal, even though that a lot of people are using it, is still a fairly small market, and then you're making it even smaller, and then you build a free product for it and you give it away. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't build modules, and there's reasons why you should do that, but you have to think this through. Building a product business where you give away your product inside of the Drupal market is a losing deal. You have to look beyond. You have to make something bigger than that. You should at least be targeting not a niche inside of Drupal. You could start inside of Drupal, but you have to have some plan for a much bigger niche. Like, for example, there's people that are doing websites for pharmacists or websites for dentists or something like that. That's a sizable market, and you can specialize in that and do something interesting. Should you make a distribution for dentists? Probably not, right? Because you're going to spend a lot of time working on that. It's going to be a nightmare to maintain it, and you're not going to make any money from it. You're just going to have other Drupal shops using your distribution, maybe. In most cases, they won't even use it. Or they'll just look under the hood and say, oh, that's what you're doing, and you didn't gain anything. Productized services are different, because productized services focus not on the product, but focus on the process. The canonical example today is, in the startup community, is WP Curve. Who knows WP Curve? Okay, great. WP Curve is a WordPress support service. WordPress support service. Yes, WordPress support service. They give away, unlimited support requests for $100 a month. Unlimited support requests for $100 a month. Are they crazy? And they're profitable. What they've done is they've said, we only do half-an-hour jobs. If something is more than a half-an-hour job, like if it's custom development or anything like that, we don't do it. But anything else, like upgrading a module or upgrading a plugin or doing some SEO work or anything like that, just ask and we'll do it for you. If you ask too much, we'll tell you. And that's $100 a month, thank you. And they're growing like crazy. And basically, the funny thing is that they started the service when they were really in trouble. Their founder had a consulting business, and he sold his consulting business to work on a product. He had a bunch of people saying, awesome product, I want to buy that. And he built it, and 1 year later, nobody was buying it, or nobody was using it. Sounds familiar? And so in a desperate move, like he had like 1 or 2 weeks of runway, he said, okay, what do I know? I know WordPress. I'm going to do a WordPress support service. He launched the thing. In a week, he had more revenue from his productized service than he had from his product, and he was running. Now, I think Drupal is a better market for finding productized services than WordPress, because Drupal can do a lot of different niches. It's kind of like a coral reef. It's much better for that than WordPress, where there's WordPress is mostly about blogging. And there's a little bit more possibilities, but you could make blogs for this kind of businesses or that kind of businesses. You could use it for small websites, but I think overall Drupal is better for a variety of niches. What we've been doing is in the last few months, we've been working on our own set of productized services. We've got one which is Dita to Drupal. I've been preaching about Dita for forever, so probably some of you remember me talking about that. What we've done now is instead of trying to build a product that's going to enable anybody, instead of making an open source Dita content management system, we've said, okay, what we'll do is we'll transform your Dita into a Drupal page. That's all we do. And we build a product around it. So we explain how it works. We've done it for a few customers, and that's our productized service now. Another one is landing pages. Paragraphs module? I'm going to have a talk mostly about paragraphs and a few other options later today. Paragraphs module lets you build these landing pages that are really popular in the startup community, we're going to launch a product about landing pages. It's going to be one price, and we just built a toolkit for a business. And all of those feed into developer portals and technology market. We are specializing in that market. We want to be the developer portal company. So if you have APIs, you know where to find me. Or if you know someone who has APIs. So Act 2. Yeah, 10 minutes? Act 2. Where did this bring us? So as remember there were 3 companies in Hungary that we were going to merge. One of them fell off. That was the one I didn't want to name. It's a long story. But the other one, KaiBest, that worked really well. And we actually, the merger is going very well. We've been working together for over a year now. And it's fantastic. The main reason why it's so fantastic, I think, well, we're very similar, but also because we're very different as founders. So I'm more of a sower. So as you probably heard today, I'm kind of an idea fountain. I'm always looking out for new stuff and always sowing little seeds everywhere. And my new partner, because we're 3, my new partner, he's more of a reaper. He collects, and he's more busy with the operational stuff. If you have a business and you're alone, and you're a sole founder, you're probably a sower. You need to go look for your reaper. It's very important. That's going to be a key to making your business more successful. Our product Walk Hub, we actually, we had to put it in the fridge a little bit, but now this summer we started working on it again. We've actually rebuilt it in Go. The backend is Go now, because we got a lot of feedback from people that they didn't want to maintain a Drupal site to be able to run walkthroughs on the site. And I was like, okay, yeah, kind of makes sense. We got selected for a booth at OSCON 2 weeks ago or last week in Amsterdam, and things are picking up. It's still alpha, the new version is still alpha, so we're working out a few kinches with switching between HTTP and HTTPS, because browsers don't like mixed content, so we need both. Because in an unprotected site, we need HTTP. It's a long story, but it looks like it's gathering steam again. So I'm really happy about that. Also, the strategy for technologies companies is kind of working out. We won the Contextio application challenge, which was an online developer challenge. So they have an API, and we built their Drupal module. And we won first or runner-up. We won $25,000 to help them with their evangelizing process. So what we're going to do is we've built this Drupal module that lets you pull emails out of your inbox and import them into Drupal. It's very cool. You should go and check it out. The Contextio module. What we're going to do is we're going to build a Drupal 8 version, and we're going to do evangelism for them. Go to events and talk about it, and not marketing, evangelism. So, and that's one of the things that we can do for technology companies. And we continue fishing. We're always fishing for new niches, and hopefully sometime in the near future, I'll have a swarm of companies that are doing slightly different things, but all working together to make a better world. And that was my talk. Thank you very much. Any questions? Yeah?
How do you actually fund all these companies?
So we're in a slightly interesting position because we're working in Hungary. I couldn't do this in Belgium. So we're slightly less expensive still than Belgian prices, but we're not as cheap as a lot of Hungarian companies. And the difference we use to fund our innovation, and this learning trajectory that you've seen, because there's been a lot of learning. Yeah. Okay. So to fund these companies, once you have a few that are running in a niche, you can use that money to build others. This is what Cronos is doing. I think I'm still a bit on the fence and still need to figure it out if it's even possible. But I'm thinking actually about making our mother company a cooperative, and that way we could raise money from the community also. So it's something that I'm thinking about, but it's not sure yet. Okay. Other questions? Yeah. Did you learn something? Okay. Well, come and see me if you have any more questions. Go and read that book. It's going to change your life. Thank you very much.